This segment of In the Field Radio is brought to you by the Village Global Network, airing on Culture Shock, Radio Verseo, Rockbox FM, and Wapter Music FM. And don't forget, you can catch the replay every Wednesday on Elgin Sound at 2 p.m.
It's In the Field Radio, y'all.
Everything's real in the field.
On 91.3 FM, WVKR.
Hey everyone, it's Erin Boogie from In the Field Radio, and I'm super excited for you guys to hear this Lady Pink interview. We did this interview during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and unfortunately, I forgot to hit record on the interview when Lady Pink came on. So the only thing that you missed was I asked her about the backstory of a Juneteenth mural that she was working on. So she started explaining that. So that's where the interview picks up. So without further ado, let's get right into the interview.
Were Latin, and they felt left out of that statement. You know, and I'm Latin, and I can sympathize with that, where they have not been left out of the police violence at all, but they're left out of that statement. Sure, Black Lives Matter, their journey of 400 years of horrific oppression is certainly not exactly similar to what Latins have faced. When we came here over 400 years ago, it wasn't such a sorry state. You know, we came here as conquistadors, we became landowners, and some didn't exactly land in such horrible circumstances like the African American people did. But now we are all in equal status. We are all oppressed. We are all minorities and second-class citizens, if not worse, in this country. So we could understand they didn't want anything political. They didn't want propaganda. They didn't want anything controversial. So we asked if we could put up the names of the fallen, and one fella said no.
Really?
But we were like, this is what we're going to do. Otherwise, we are not driving 2 hours down into New York City, 5 of us with all our supplies to paint in the blazing heat, full sun, just so that we could like do something decorative and silly and fluffy. And no one is feeling that way. We were not going to go. We were not going to go and do it. So we did a bunch of flowers because the neighborhood had asked for. They wanted artwork. They wanted something uplifting. And flowers will do it, lots of big mega color going on, and then with a black background, so all the beautiful colors popped out of the flowers, and then suddenly in gray paint on the black background, we wrote the names, and they kept coming, and the spectators that were standing there watching us just kept throwing out more names, and there's another name, and then you remember this one, and then remember that one, and it's awful that these names became household words, because they were in the news so much, the atrocities and all of this, and we had to go home. We had to stop. There had to be an ending at some point. We pack up our supplies. It was the end of the day. We were exhausted, and the names kept coming, and it was just so sad.
I think that also speaks to how the world is feeling. Like you said, they weren't looking for like a fluff piece. They were looking for that, and you were able to give it to them, even though it wasn't necessarily what you were asked to do. I think that's really beautiful.
A week went by and we didn't hear any fuss from the neighborhood. There was no uproar, no anything. And so I was able to post it on my Instagram and let everyone know that we did that and such. I didn't even sign it. We didn't even think to sign it because this was bigger than us. Didn't have anything to do with us. This was bigger than us. So we did a memorial to the fallen instead of, putting up political propaganda or putting up an agenda or anything like that. Everyone can agree. It's just tragic. We lost all these lives too soon.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really beautiful. I think it's really inspiring.
Thank you.
So now take us back to those early days. How did you get into painting?
I got into graffiti like any teenager did by searching out for fun and excitement and adventures and friends to hang out with and more fun and adventures. So I started writing graffiti at the age of 15 when my very first boyfriend was arrested for writing graffiti around the streets and around the school, and his family shipped them to go live in Puerto Rico with friends, with family. And at that age, he couldn't come back. You have no money, you can't fly back. So he was lost to me. I cried for a month and then started writing his name around the middle school. And his friends took me under their wing and taught me style because graffiti isn't just random letters. It's very, very specific fonts and letters and style that you have to practice and practice and practice before you can bring it out to prime time, before you can paint with your friends and tag with your friends and not embarrass them. So you have to learn style. And then I started in the High School of Art and Design, which is in Midtown Manhattan, in the middle of New York City. And talented kids from every corner of New York City come there. You have to show a portfolio. You have to be certified talented to get into school. And that's where I met like hundreds of kids that wrote graffiti. And then I met some of the bad boys that actually knew how to get into the subway yards. And it took me months of proving myself and pestering them and carrying on and annoying them to take me to the train yards. And they didn't want to because it's dangerous. And they were like, you know, you wear silk dresses, high heels, and makeup. You're a complete femme. How can we take you to the train yard? And I had to prove to them that I can dress like a little boy and act like a little tomboy, and I'm brave and strong, and all of those things that you need to be. And finally, they took me to the train yards, and I had to prove myself that it just, you know, art, talent, or anything. You have to know how to scale walls with a heavy knapsack, learn how to run for miles and paint in the dark and be absolutely fearless and hang from a pole 10 feet off and jump and do all kinds of crazy things that mostly boys do. They practice doing this, playing cops and robbers and cowboys and Indians and going through adventures, and girls don't do that as much. So, you know, luckily I learned quick, and I was absolutely fearless, to the point of being reckless and foolish and insane. My friend said I was absolutely insane. I could not be controlled. So it takes a particular personality to jump into being a graffiti writer. You know, this isn't just about art. This is just about doing vandalism. It's about getting up. It's about doing a crime. It's about breaking and entering, trespassing, learning how to lift your paint, you know, 5-finger discount, that. Mm-hmm. And all kinds of issues, learning how to steal and lie and have a double life so that your family and your teachers, no one knows that you are a criminal at night, like Zorro or something like that. I mean, really, it's a lot different than the entertainment part of hip hop, than the breakdancers and the rappers. Sure, they started off on the street corners and maybe stealing a little electricity from the lamppost to do their DJing thing and all of that, but all in all, we train vandals when we're training graffiti writers, how to break into the subway system, how to move around like a ninja, like a shadow, how to run from the police and evade the cops and all of that. The dancers, the entertainers, they're not really teaching the kids how to do that so much.
I actually wanted to ask you, how dangerous was it painting back then on subway cars in the 80s? And not just because they were trains, but because that was like the tough on crime. Like New York City had a bad rap at that point. There was like the whole campaign to stop the graffiti on the train cars. So I can imagine that painting in the train yards and on some of the train bridges and stuff that you guys painted on back then was dangerous, but the culture at the time was dangerous too.
So it had been dangerous since the 1970s. So kids had already died doing it. So in all kinds of mishaps and mayhem. So we already knew that it was dangerous, from being electrocuted, from mysterious circumstances when the cops get you, and all sorts of incidents like that. But even getting to the train yards, a little tiny thing like me, out at midnight by myself, to even go to the worst neighborhoods of New York City, at the ends of New York City, to meet up with my friends, that was dangerous enough. All kinds of guys trying to get friendly with you. I used to pull out a knife and clean my nails with it. And then that would make them disappear, because they say, oh, she's insane. She's out here in the middle of the night with a knife, you know, let's try not to get friendly. But it was scary. It was an adventure even to get there, but we had to move in small groups. So it was safer being in a small group, not too big, because then it gets noisy. So a group of 3 or 4 trusted people, and then the danger even started then, because if somebody caught you out there in the train yard, the police was not there to help you, your mama was not there to help you, and bigger groups preyed on smaller groups, because the easiest way to get spray paint is to take it from a baby. So, you know, if you were young and you had no backup or support or connections, if you were a nobody, they'd come and they'd take your knapsack of spray paint and maybe your coat and your sneakers if they were pretty. So, you know, and then the tunnels got even scarier, because some homeless people sleeping down there and they don't like to be disturbed. So, you know, you shake a can of spray paint and hope they don't kill you. So it's pretty scary down there. You know, you're lurking around. You know what you find at the end of a dark alley in New York City? You don't want to know.
Yeah.
You don't want to know. So just shut your eyes, shake a spray can, and hope they don't kill you. Right? So it was pretty scary going out there and painting all of that. So the best way to go about it is to go to the right place at the right time and to know the right people. So I made friends with the right people. I was down with the right crews. And it's more of a social status kind of thing. And that opens doors. When I say I'm with TC5, they're like, oh, fine, you're welcome here. And so on and so on. So and you prove yourself. And you get put down on crews by showing off work, by just doing a large amount of work or beautiful work. So quantity or quality is all the same thing. You gain respect. People put you down on crews and you're safe. You can go into neighborhoods you've never been in and you say, yeah, I know this guy and I'm down in that crew, and then no one will touch you. But if you're a nobody and you've got no connections, they'll prey on you.
Mm-hmm. And so your first tag was your boyfriend's name?
Yes, it was. It was a boy name. So then my friends in high school decided that was a boy's name. It was Coke, Koke. And since I was going to be the only girl in a graffiti group, in any group in New York City, because there weren't any more girls writing. There had been in the 70s, but they all stopped and grown up and got lives. And then there was me. So they felt I should have a girl name. And the word pink was very, very feminine because boys wouldn't take it. And the K kicked out, and it could do designs with it, and the P begins flat, so you could do designs before that as well without destroying the letter. And the I you could always dot with a heart or a flower or something cute. So they said pink was going to be my name, and I had to accept it. Fine. It was not my favorite color. It since has grown on me. Since everyone gives me pink everything, that's fine. That's fine. And then I titled myself Lady because I was a huge fan of reading historical romances as a kid. So reading about the European nobility and aristocracy and Duke and Duchess and Lady this and all of that. And in high school, we were royalty. We had the best table in the lunchroom. I'd snap my fingers. Some kid would get me lunch. I'd snap my fingers. I'd get a chair. I had it going on. I was the queen. I was royal. So the kids that didn't have it, they didn't even get seats. They'd just stand around on the fringes like the court. So, it was fun. High school was fun. I know people have terrible memories of high school, but I actually didn't go to class very much. I spent most of my time planning graffiti, scheming on graffiti, going out to go get supplies. Took all day, a car ride outside of New York City till you filled it all up with spray paint, and then you came back. And so it was a lot of work just to even do the graffiti that we were doing as kids.
Let's take a quick break.
In the Field Radio is brought to you by Mrs. Kisses Pies, the Capital Region's go-to bakery for all your sweet treat needs. From their legendary sweet potato pie to their Cookie Monster or Cinnamon Toast Crunch cheesecakes and any flavors you can think of in between, Mrs. Kisses Pies is guaranteed to bring out the kid in you with a fresh and delicious masterpiece that'll be remembered long after your next event or family dinner. So visit Mrs. Kisses Pies in Albany and on Facebook to order your own custom desserts. And they'll even deliver if you're on the 518.
And you earned the name the First Lady of Graffiti. What was your experience being the first well-known female painter?
I was a teenager, and you know how kids just adapt so well to changing circumstances that, one weekend I'm in a tunnel like a rat painting, and then another weekend I'm in some fancy home of some rich person dolled up in silk and high heels and being fed liquor and drugs and all kinds of fun stuff, and hanging out with Keith Haring and Basquiat, and going out. At 17, I'm at a party with Andy Warhol. Oh so life experiences at that age was just absolutely amazing. I didn't have time for my senior year of high school as I was booked up with exhibits and traveling and documentaries and films and photo shoots and all kinds of amazing things that were happening. And I was just rolling with it, just going with it. Party. It's exciting, it's fun, and kid, just step up to it. But I was a natural at stepping up to the mic on media. So being pushed to the forefront of being of live television and interviews and all kinds, because I was the more approachable one and not as scary as my little riffraff friends were. They were a little more, a little scarier, a little shady and all, but I was more approachable. I was friendly, and I did not come from the ghetto. I come from a good family, and I was raised in Queens, New York, a middle class family. But in Ecuador, I come from an upper middle class family. My real dad in Ecuador was a senator, and one of my uncles was governor of the Galapagos Islands for a while. So I come from, pretty decent family. So it wasn't too much of a reach for me to get along with above ground folk.
You could exist in both worlds.
I could easily exist in both worlds. So I had manners, I had poise, I had, I was eloquent. I was older beyond my years. You couldn't believe that I was only 16, 17 years old at that. So I got along well. I sold my first painting at the age of 15. Oh, and I couldn't believe folks were willing to give me so much money for the same nonsense I was doing on a subway train for free. So, we figured we'll ride this boat until it fizzles out and so on. We figured it's just a fad. Everyone's selling paintings. We've got big bank accounts. We're just squandering it like kids do. But no, it just kept going. The invitations, the exhibits, it just kept snowballing for years and years and years. And then there was a lull there in the late 80s. And I got into taking in commissions and commercial murals, doing interiors with brush, and for everything from nightclubs and restaurants and private homes. And because I was so versatile with my artwork, I could adapt and paint all kinds of styles, everything from, classical stuff and ancient stuff and modern and whatever style people requested, apparently I could do. So I would lie and say, yeah, I could do that. And then I'd go home and practice it a lot. And then when I showed up to work, I actually did know how to do it. So, it was hard to turn down all the loads and loads of money. But I did have one drawback, was the fact that I was a female trying to break into the contracting world, because a lot of those places were under construction, and it's just a bunch of construction dudes, and then they want a mural. And then the girl shows up, and they're like, "Are you sure you can paint that big old wall, little girl?" And then I'd see, who do I have to smack for even saying that to me? I was looking for a male partner, and then I ended up meeting my husband, and we've been married for 26 years now. But he was the white guy that I was looking for to be the front man. He's always very quiet and shy, and also a graffiti writer. He traumatized 2 mayors in his time. So, but he's quiet and shy. It's always the quiet ones that are more trouble,
No, that's true.
But I had to push him to be the front man and learn how to speak and learn how to get us more money, because white guys with blue eyes get loads more money than little Latin women like me. And they don't talk down to a white guy too by saying, "Can you paint this big old wall, little boy?" They don't say that to them, A white guy shows up, they have no doubts he can do the job. So we break up our duties. I speak about themes and colors and artsy stuff, and he talks about, invoices and money and funds. And when he asks for loads and loads of money, he gets it. So this is the game we have to play. Sure, I can bitch and whine and carry on about the injustices and how unfair it is, and why can't the girl get as much money as the white guy? But this is the world as is. So I have to play their game, and he's got to be the front man on that. And besides, he's more computer literate than me. I'm rather stupid with that. I'm tech challenged. So it's his job to handle all the invoicing and the accounting and the administration and all of that stuff. But he's also quite an accomplished artist, and we make a great team together.
Shout him out too.
His name is Smith.
That way people who are listening, that they can go check his artwork out too. And who are some of your influences?
Wow. So initially we teach each other master to apprentice. So some of my influences were literally some of my friends from school, some masters who taught me. Somebody taught me style and lettering and how to use spray paint. Another one taught me how to get into the train yards. Everyone teaches a little something to someone. So C&T C5 was my first master, my first teacher, followed by Doze and then Ernie. And those were my biggest influences. But some of the heroes that I got to hang out with later, like Lee and Dondi and Zephyr and Days and Crash. Some of these friends I still know today, 40 years later, and they inspire me still every day. So I follow them on Instagram. And there's a lot of women around the world. They say that I inspire them. I inspire them to start doing this to begin with. But honestly, they inspire me more. Like Mad C from Germany, like Faith 47 from South Africa, Shiro from Japan, Nikki from the Netherlands, and Nina from Brazil. And there's just so many. I could go on and on and on. And I follow them on Instagram so I can see what they're doing. And it's like, oh no, she did not paint a 10-story building. I have to keep up with that. And they are just amazing. They're brilliant. They're fearless. They're reckless. They're just, you know, they're my heroes. So a lot of the women, shout out to a lot of the women around the world. Oh yes, Blue from Sweden. She was in New York for a little while painting some giant penises. And then she's gone back to Sweden now and she's painting giant vaginas again. And I painted in Sweden last year and I had to put it in the contract I had to sign the contract that said I wasn't going to be painting any vaginas like Blue. She traumatized that entire country of Sweden. I swear to you.
So they actually put that in the contract because of her.
Yes.
That's incredible. So your graffiti has brought you all around the world. What's your favorite country to paint in?
Oh my goodness, that's a difficult one to favorite country to paint in. I don't know. There's been some good ones. Last year I went through Singapore and painted there, which was Future World. And then I painted in Ecuador, which was amazing. Ukraine was also pretty awesome. I love painting in all of Europe because the audience, the people are so welcoming and so friendly. But one of the funnest and best places I got to paint in was a little town within Denmark, within Copenhagen. It was called Christiania, and it was a self-contained community that the police did not go into. They had an open air hashish market. You can paint whatever walls you wanted. You can build your houses like a teapot or a Viking house. There were no building codes. You can do whatever. And it was all very respectful and the vibe was mellow and very cool. And we could just walk down the street smoking a joint, painting a wall, and people having fun. And the police would not go in there and enforce any laws or anything like that. They'd let the people just handle it themselves, and it was so cool. So this was called Christiania, and in the middle of Copenhagen, Denmark.
I'm gonna look that up. It sounds like a place I need to visit ASAP. So talk a little bit about your experience starring in Wild Style.
Okay, that movie Wild Style was the very first movie that coined the phrase, I believe, hip hop. It was filmed in 1982. And it came out then. I was 16, 17 years old when the movie was made. And we didn't actually take it very seriously. The director, Charlie Ahern, was just another friend hanging out in the scene. And then he's got a film crew following us around. And we're trying to make this silly movie. No one's taking it seriously. No one imagined that it would still be around 40 years later as a cult movie or something. But my goodness, if we'd have known that, we would have asked for acting coaches, wardrobe, makeup, you know, all kinds of other little frills that you take for granted in most movies. But this was a real low budget film. Everyone in there was a real graffiti writer, a real breakdancer, real rapper, real muggers. There's two guys in there with a sort of shotgun. Those are real muggers from the Bronx. That's a real shotgun right there. Everything was completely real and raw and very, very pure. And folks love it for that, because the next movie that came out was Beat Street by Harry Belafonte, and then Hollywood had then diluted it and washed it down for the mainstream audiences and so. But no, Wild Style was very pure. I have just very few impressions of that. You know, it's hard to remember stuff as a teenager.
Yeah.
memories fade. But it was just absolutely amazing to be that in that film. The director, as he met people, included them in the film. He'd never seen the breakdancers before. I brought them to a party. He saw them for the first time, included them in the film. He learned about the love story between myself and Lee, and that was a 4-year, very traumatic love story for me. And he threw that into the film, which is why I can't ever see that film. We have this long, wet, sloppy kiss going on there that I do not ever want to see. I had nightmares about this guy for years and years. And, you know, we've had to get over it, and we're friends now because we exhibit in the same places and we're always seeing each other. So we've had to get over it. But that film was something.
So you had no idea at the time that it was going to be what it was?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
I think it's so funny when people always say that, because I guess in the time at the time you're just in it, so you would have no idea what it would become 40 years later. You're not thinking that.
No. I mean, we were doing documentaries and books and traveling and all kinds of big whirlwind of activity that no one knew where anything was going to go. Again, we were just riding this for as long as it lasted. We didn't think, you know, that it would be anything. And you never know that when you're starting a movement or a revolution or anything like that. You're just going about your business, doing your thing. You don't know that this is a music revolution, a dance revolution, an art revolution, and that we've spawned street art, which is the world's biggest art movement now. We were just a bunch of kids having fun. We were just having kicks and giggles, and there's not much for adventure that you can do in a big city, you know, kids that have no money or anything. So sneaking around and doing art and expressing ourselves and all of that was just about fun. And who knew that it would be a movement?
That was actually going to be my next question, was if you thought that at the time, did you ever think graffiti would grow to be such an accepted, because it was not accepted at the time, and even revered art form?
Yeah, sure. We knew that. So no, we were painting trains, trying to figure out what are we going to be when we grow up. No, there was not a plan that it would still be around, that it would go mainstream, that it would be accepted, that folks would buy it and we would make a living out of it, and we would consider it our education, because a lot of us have stayed being artists and have made a living out of being artists. And I don't do graffiti all the time, certainly not, but I do use my talent and everything that I learned from there. What it taught me was a lot of confidence and courage and no nonsense, and how to get stuff done quick and not get too attached to the work that I can't keep.
So now your pieces are being hung up in museums. How does it feel to go from painting on walls and subway cars to having your art hanging on the wall in museums?
Well, this has been happening to me since I was the age of 16. Well, my work hanging
right off the bat?
Right off the bat, hanging at PS1, hanging at the new museum, and such. So since I was a very young kid, I'd had my work hanging in fancy galleries, marble halls, and bigger shows and things that I didn't even know how important they were, but I had some grown-ups that would tell me that. So I had mentors all along: Martin Wong, Jenny Holzer, John Fechner, Richard Hamilton, all of these guys, Haring. These guys were the original street artists. They worked in different mediums. They worked in chalk and posters and stencils and such. And they were part of the East Village group. So they would tell me how important it is. When you're still in high school and you're a teenager, you're like, I don't know, you don't know anything, you don't know what's important. Or so there's some grown-ups that tell you, yes, this is important, yes, take it seriously, you have to show up on time, you have to be there, you have to do the artwork, you know, all of that. So it's great to have had mentorship, you know, of grown-ups at that time. Yeah.
What advice would you give to up and coming painters?
To up and coming painters, that half of the work is business. It isn't all about painting pretty pictures or using a platform for a voice and making some imagery, photos or paintings or whatever. Half of it is business. If you want to survive as an artist, you have to learn business. So if art school neglected in teaching you any business school, or if you just didn't pick it up because you're a street artist and you're learning the street art way, then you still have to learn business. So you have to learn how to do job quotes and that invoices, and learn how to price yourself. What is your value? What do you want to charge for your work? So half of it is business. And if you don't have a head for it, or if you don't want to do the business, then you have to hire someone. Or luckily I was able to marry someone that was my executive assistant and handled all of that boring stuff, because artists work with one half of our brain, and we don't really want to wander over on the other side that is orderly and analytical, and will do all of that accounting and boring business work. But you have to learn how to make phone calls and answer letters and promote yourself and sell yourself like a good little whore. So being a salesperson is just as important as learning how to paint a pretty picture.
No, I think that's really good advice. I think people sometimes forget the business part of things. That happens in the music industry too.
Oh yeah. And photographers too. They don't know how to price themselves, what their value is. And then you're open to being exploited, because you don't know what your value is. And then artists are willing to do stuff for free just for the exposure. You'd be surprised, even like Snapchat approaching me, asking me to do stuff for them for free.
And I think sometimes people think that when they're starting out, they need to do things for free just for exposure.
Yeah, that's not so. Artists need to learn how to hustle. And school doesn't really teach you how to hustle, how to get your stuff out there, knock on doors, sell your work. You know, when I've been in tough times, I've just gone up and down the street and knock on doors and nightclubs and restaurants and convince them that I'm amazing and I can make their place amazing, and walk out of there with a $10,000 job. Come on, just walking up the street, you know, that easily like that. So then you start calling your friends to help you, and then you do this thing, and one job leads to another job, leads to another. Once you have photos of a finished product, like a job or a mural, even if you did the first one for free, you have a finished photo, and with that, you hustle and you get yourself other work, going in and out of doors, knocking on doors and asking for artwork, and say, I can make your business memorable. I can increase your business by so much, and I'm amazing. But you have to have that confidence to sell yourself. And here's a photo, here's proof of the amazing work that I did, and so on and so on. And kids can survive on that. Even the youngest teenagers doing store gates and small walls for shops or something like that. If you've got talent, it's your duty to use it. So get out there and hustle.
Deborah's still breaking up kind of bad, but she wanted me to ask you, how were you able to separate yourself from the criminal perception of graffiti? How did you separate yourself from someone who just went around tagging everything and then moving into the art world? And did you ever get in trouble for doing graffiti?
No. We covered this a little bit earlier. You had to go to the right places with the right people at the right time, so that there's no incidents and no one gets arrested. So that's not to say I haven't been in some gnarly chases, and I had to run from the cops a few times. And the first time I went on a date with my husband, we went and painted a subway train together. I brought a Swiss kid, he had a French kid, and we stayed too long. He said an hour, we were there an hour and a half. And then the cops came and chased us. And we ran and ran through tunnels and climbed up more tunnels, live tunnels, trains going all directions and crazy stuff. We lost each other, and then popped up in the middle of Central Park on a sunny afternoon, and watching all the tourists scatter like frightened deer, because we were all black and bleeding and dirty, but we escaped and we got away. So, and that's how we fell in love and got married eventually. But I've been into some chases, but no, I've never been arrested for graffiti. I've been to the right place to the right time. So like we were talking about, some weekends I'd be in a train tunnel and painting a subway car, dressed up like a little boy, all dirty and grubby. And then on another weekend, I'd be in some rich person's house or a nightclub or a gallery, and hobnobbing with the wealthy society of New York City, dressed up like a doll, a fashion plate, high heels, silk dresses, makeup to the teeth, looking all fancy, and people giving us liquor and drugs for underage drinking. People did not care. So we were having the time of our lives. It was very easy. So, you know, I was a consummated actress. I would pretend to be rich and wealthy one weekend, and then a little scrub thug the next weekend, running around in like a rat. So, you know, there was a time for everything going on, and we just roll with the punches.
Do you have a favorite piece that you've done?
It's like picking a favorite child, you know, that's cruel.
That's what I figured.
All the other children get jealous. So it would have to be one piece that I call Queen Matilda, only because I spent almost 6 months working on that. Little by little by little, I'd put it away, do other work, and painting work. I'd bring it back out and paint. I put all my friends in it. I'd be laughing when I painted it, doing silly, ridiculous stuff. And I modeled it on that little town that I was telling you about, Christiania, which is that self-contained little village inside Copenhagen in Denmark. And I did it like that. So that there's a brick woman sitting there, and at her feet is a little walled city. And the entranceway is the Brooklyn Bridge. There's a subway spiraling all the way around her. There's a bunch of little buildings, and there's graffiti everywhere on the subways, on the rooftops, on the walls. And there's all kinds of people all around. I have little Bo Peep and her sheep. I have a midget with a lime green top hat and a Playboy bunny going into a nightclub. I've got all kinds of little things. I have Madeline with the what are they called? A nun. You know that book, Madeline, and she's in the back jumping around. I mean, it's just a silly painting. And I did sell it because I was offered a ridiculous amount of money and I had to part with it. But before it went, I sent a photographer to document it, a real high resolution files for me. And I've made some prints of it. And I do have one hanging in my house because I really, really love the painting. And I guess maybe she is my favorite in the whole entire world. Don't tell the other paintings that.
And so what brought you to the Hudson Valley?
It was the Vandal Squad. It was the police that drove us here.
Wow.
So to make a long story short, I've had 2 raids in my house by the Vandal Squad in 10 years. First in 2003 and then in 2013. The last time they came into my house with a SWAT team truck out front and a bunch of cops in my hallway with shields and helmets and guns drawn, and they're all filing in. My hands were up. So they had arrested my husband and filed fake graffiti charges. They raided my house and took all my spray paint, my computers, my books, my photos. They took artwork off the walls. I had to sit on a sofa with a policewoman for about 4 hours while I watched the cops rob me again. Second time in 10 years.
Oh my God.
So the first time there was no crime committed, no charges filed, but they could do this. They could legally come into your house, take your stuff, hold it for a year and a half, and then either file charges or they have to give you your stuff back.
Yeah.
But they can do this. They can come into your house and take your shit. So they did that for the in 2003, and then they did it again in 2013. They get a flimsy warrant, and then they come into my house. And in court, when they're saying, yes, we took almost 10,000 cans or 1,000 cans of spray paint, it sounds bad for my husband. And we had to post $5,000 bail. He'd had a record from when he was a teenager. So the Vandal Squad was hoping that this was going to stick, and it was something stupid. It was over 103 artists did an abandoned subway station in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And this is an abandoned subway station that was never going to be used. There's no tunnels, there's no tracks to it. It's just an abandoned station. No electricity even. These people were painting in the dark. Over 100 artists, they painted down there. And this idiot, Logan Hicks, put out a book too soon. And then he even put photos of people's faces in there, which was really messed up. So anyway, the Vandal Squad figured that some artwork in there looked like my husband's style. That was it.
That was it?
That was it. That was enough to get a flimsy warrant, come into my house, take all my stuff, scare the bejesus out of me, and completely upend my life. Because when my computers walked out the door, all my work walked out the door. My mentorships and jobs and travels and gigs and sales and everything walked out the door. This was really messed up. So we got our computers back maybe like 5 months later, but everything they held on to for like over a year. And it took that long with an expensive attorney to have all the charges dropped because there was no crime committed. They had nothing. This couldn't hold water. They just do this to oppress us, to fuck with us because, they feel that we are profiting from alleged crime, graffiti.
Charges, you guys still had to get an expensive attorney and fight it?
Yeah. Even if you're innocent, you still have to go to court and prove yourself innocent. There's no getting around that. So we have an expensive attorney. We have a woman who looks out for a number of graffiti groups against the Vandal Squad because this is what they do. they file dirty charges. They never holds water, but they fuck with you over and over again. You have to keep paying for a lawyer. You have to keep, going to court, and it takes like, a year's worth of court every month. You go back, and it's just absolute torture. And then they have all my stuff. Who knows when I'm going to get it back? And they've done this to a lot of other people. If anyone has the nerve to organize an event, put out a book, make a movie, a documentary, whatever the fuck, if you are prospering from what they allege is a crime, they'll make up charges and raid your home, take your stuff, and do what's called phishing, just trying to look for a crime, someone, a video, a photo, someone doing graffiti or breaking the law, anything that they can snag you with. You know what I mean? So they're dirty cops. They're just awful. And that's why we had to move out of the city, because the Vandal Squad, the graffiti police, have jurisdiction in New York City and the 5 boroughs. They can't come upstate New York and make up stuff. They need the state police. They need actual proof that something bad, that we've been doing something bad, for them to raid our house and take our stuff. But this is the kind of nightmare that we've all had to live with.
It's amazing to me that you can have your artwork hanging on the walls of museums and that they still feel the need to put the pressure on you like that.
Yeah, they do. So I think it was maybe 2 summers ago, the Vandal Squad, the transit police were up here. 2 detectives in a fancy car and suits and stuff came up here to question my husband about some kid tagging up sane on some train station, half an hour from here. They don't even have walls, it's just columns. And then some little kid was tagging his late brother's name. His brother died in 1990, sane. And anybody could take that name. Anybody could write that. The cops came up here to question him, said, did you give the name away? Are you training some kid how to tag? And whatever. They just came up here to say that we know where you live. Yep. We know where you're hiding. We know you're in the woods, and then this is where you live. I was so angry to see those people, those 2 cops up here. Oh, God. So
that's terrible.
Yeah.
All right, one more question. What can we expect next from Lady Pink?
I don't know. Oh my word! I have a show at the Graffiti Museum in Miami in September. I'm sending actual work because I've done actual work. So the paintings are going. Whether the doors will be able to open and let folks in to see the paintings will be amazing. But even so, if it's a virtual show, it'll still happen. So I'm just, continuously painting. I have a studio. I started bringing my assistants back. I furloughed them for a couple of months, but just now they were tested for COVID. They're clean, and I've started having them back to help me out with everything else. So everything's shut down for a little while, but now work is spiraling and coming on back, and the exterior murals are happening. Thank goodness we can paint outdoors and keep people at a distance, and not have to come into contact with anyone, which is why we went into New York City. We put up yellow tape. We sectioned ourselves off, and folks couldn't come near us. And we did our thing in one day, that wall for Juneteenth. In one day, we knocked it out. It's pretty scary stuff. So I don't know what's happening. All these things that were scheduled. I have an exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and that's one of the 5th biggest museums in the nation. That show was supposed to open in April, and now it's been pushed into the fall. And I have to go there and speak as well, and that's going to be iffy with an audience. Maybe we can do this outdoors. I don't know. There's quite a few things going on. What other kind of fun stuff am I working on? I can't imagine. It's always spiraling. Lots and lots of work.
And then especially right now too, it's so uncertain. Like you said, like live painting and that kind of stuff is going to be kind of on hold for a little while. Yeah. But all the jobs are coming back, and we all have to figure out how we can social distance and do all the work possible. And I think that's it for me. Is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners?
Nope, I think we pretty much covered a lot of stuff.
Thank you so much. This was a really awesome interview.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I hope your viewers enjoy this, and maybe they can catch a little bit of the visuals, things that we talked about on your website.
Definitely. And I'll post up too, like when you have stuff going on, like I'll definitely post it up for them to check out as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome back to In the Field Radio. You know what I'm about to do. Make sure you follow In the Field Radio. Write to me. Tell me what you think. Do song requests. You know what I'm saying? Talk to me. Do shout outs. If you write to me in the DMs, I'm going to read it. And I'm going to do what you tell me to do. Boss me around. I like that stuff. At In the Field Radio on everything. All right. I'm about to get out of here. Big thank you and I love you to anybody that's rocking with us. All our loyal listeners. Love you guys. Thanks for chilling with those chicks on Mondays. In the Field Radio 91.3 FM WVKR Poughkeepsie. Have a good night.